Welcome back to my random sphere grid challenge run of Final Fantasy X. For a brief recap of what happened last time, we named our protagonist RNGesus, and we have 6 party members so far. We're using the Expert Sphere Grid for maximum randomness, and every time a character reaches a fork in the path on the sphere grid, we roll a die to determine direction. The results so far are that RNGesus himself is the most affected. He is physically very weak, despite his typical role being a quick melee striker. Instead, he is pretty committed to traveling down Lulu's path, making him destined to be a mage, though his magic stat is still so bad that he can't possibly fill that role yet. As for the rest of the party, the only really significant changes are that characters are generally weaker than they should be at this point in the game, especially Auron and Kimahri, who have been durdling around a bit near the center of the sphere grid with no real direction. The MVPs of the team are Wakka, who is still getting a good amount of strength boosts, and Lulu and Yuna, who have stuck hard to their own grids and therefore are doing fine. Picking up where we left off the story, the team are traveling down Djose High Road towards Djose Temple after the complete disaster that was Operation Mi'ihen. There is definitely a thick cloud of despair in the air around the High Road and Temple, as many Crusaders were killed, and the survivors are basically societal pariahs because of their gamble with forbidden machina. When the team arrive at Djose Temple, there is an impressive display of lightning around the temple, which is an indication some other summoner is communing with the faith. As they go inside, they run into a new character by the name of Issaru, and his 2 brothers who act as his guardians. Why he chose to let his clearly prepubescent brother be a guardian is beyond me, when even middle-aged samurai Auron is struggling to kill these fiends. As they go into the inner chambers to start the trial, Issaru stops RNGesus and gives him a warning. Some summoners have been going missing nearby. The Djose Cloister involves moving around lots of electrified spheres acting as batteries, but is pretty simple. The reward is, unfortunately, a magic sphere. I'll take this time to note that I do not intend to use any spheres that fill in empty nodes on this run, as it goes against the spirit of the challenge. So this reward is a big old waste. Even a basic potion would have more value. After reaching the innermost chamber, RNGesus is chastised by all his friends to calm down and sit still. Then, Miss Bad Attitude summoner rival Donna shows up with her beefcake boyfriend Bartello. At first, he seems to be giving the stink eye to Auron, but it turns out he's a huge fan and just wants to shake his hand. Donna finally got some just desserts for her constant hectoring of our heroine Yuna. Yuna picked up the new Aeon Ixion, who will be seeing a lot of use in the near future. The next day, Yuna overslept after staying up all night sending the souls of the dead, and she gets teased by the team in a small moment of levity during a rough time. The next area is a long stretch of road leading to a massive river called the Moonflow. The enemies in this area are a serious step up in difficulty, especially the Ochus. These guys are basically the Lord Ochu from Kilika, but as regular enemies, and they pose quite a challenge for the underpowered party. Ixion pulls a lot of weight, taking these guys down with minimal resources. During this period, Kimahri has been having a particularly tough time on the sphere grid. He is going in actual circles, passing a lot of empty nodes. Basically, most of his sphere levels have gone to complete waste, making his growth stunted. But one positive thing is that RNGesus got the very handy overdrive mode, Warrior, which is vastly superior to the default mode, Stoic. Now, he can much more reliably use his overdrives in combat, and that will lead to him learning his more powerful overdrives sooner. As the team reach the Moonflow, RNGesus is quite impressed with the view, especially when he sees the star attraction, Zishupaf. As Auron explains, even Jecht was blown away at the sight of this massive thing, and tried to take it down like a fiend, the evidence of which is still visible through the terrible scaly texture on his 3D model, if you look close enough. Everybody gets aboard Zishupaf, but during the crossing of the river, Yuna is kidnapped by some Albed assailants and taken underwater. Guess we found out who is responsible for the missing summoners. Wakka and RNGesus are forced to confront the kidnappers and rescue Yuna, as they are the only 2 who can breathe and fight underwater, I guess. Now, at first I was really dreading this battle because I knew it was a 2-man party and one of the members would be my weakest link, RNGesus. However, as it turns out, this fight went extremely well, and in fact the stars kind of aligned for making it extra easy. Let me explain. First, Wakka had picked up a very handy little trick from Auron's sphere grid, Magic Break. This reduces magic damage dealt by an enemy by half. Next, RNGesus was deep into Lulu's sphere grid and had gotten a hold of her buffing ability Focus. This typically just increases magic damage dealt and is a good way to improve Lulu's damage output, but it has another effect. It increases magic defense as well, further reducing the damage of magic attacks coming from the enemy. Finally, the Extractor basically just uses one move the entire fight, Aqua Shooter. This is a magic damage attack, presumably water elemental, but that isn't particularly relevant here. Since it deals magic damage, with Magic Break and several stacks of focus, the damage was reduced to negligible levels and the team basically had no need to worry about heals. The extractor does try to launch some depth charges now and then, but a few hits from Waka always stopped that before it happened. All in all, RNGesus was on buffing duty and Waka on offense, and it went down surprisingly easily. After winning the battle, Waka went on a racist tirade against Albed. RNGesus has a surprisingly observant moment where he notices Yuna is uncomfortable and diverts the conversation to just focusing on their jobs protecting Yuna. And so, the team arrived on the other side of the Moonflow, ready to proceed with their journey. Yuna is surrounded by people again on the shore of the Moonflow, so RNGesus, jealous of her popularity, shimmies off to the next area alone. There, he encounters a strangely familiar young girl in a wetsuit. It turns out to be Riku, who RNGesus is more than happy to see again. When he almost reveals her as an Albed in front of Albed racist Waka, Yuna and Lulu pick up on it and decide to hold a girls-only huddle nearby. Not sure what they talked about, but somehow they decided that Riku being Yuna's guardian is the best solution. Nobody has any reason to object, and so our party grows to 7, and the final member is available at last. While exploring the forest in the next zone, the tutorial for Riku's mechanics happens, explaining her ability to open chests and her overdrive, Mix. I have a feeling Mix might be a very clutch thing to have at some point in the future. I spent a short while grinding XP outside the gates of Guadosalam, since the enemies here are pretty weak, and Riku is seriously weak when she first joins. During this grind, Auron picked up the overdrive mode warrior as well. Now, once Waka gets it, things will be looking up quite a bit. Once I get enough levels to spend, I went back to the sphere grid. Most notably, Yuna learned her next tier of healing spell, Cura, and Riku made her first move, but it was a bad one. She jumped straight into Kimahri's grid through a level 1 lock. This could be a really bad sign, considering Kimahri's grid leads to literally everybody else's, so she could end up anywhere now. When the team enter Guadosalam, the city of the Guado, they are greeted by a polite butler type named Trommel. He instructs Yuna and co to visit Seymour's manor and speak with him, so the next destination is set. Before going there though, Riku takes a second to teach RNGesus about customizing weapons and armor with new abilities. For the moment, I don't intend to use this function. However, if things get too rough in the future, it could be a way to balance the difficulty a bit. As of now, Customize feels against the spirit of the challenge, so I will be banning it. The team journey to Seymour's house, and there everybody is immediately on high alert and suspicious of what is about to happen. Even Kimahri speaks up his feelings on the matter.
Kimahri not like Mr. Seymour.
When Seymour invites the team to his chambers, he shows them images of the past. RNGesus, of course, recognizes his home city, Zanarkand. But the ulterior motive here is that Seymour is trying to impart upon Yuna the link between her and her distant ancestor in the summoner arts, Yunalesca. Yunalesca is well known for having a deep romance with her guardian, Zaon, and Seymour is relying on this to pressure Yuna into doing something. That something is marrying him. For what reason, we don't know yet, but Yuna is clearly shaken by this sudden bold request. As the team leaves to think over the situation, Seymour makes a curious observation. Auron smells of the far plane. Yuna decides she needs to visit her deceased parents in the far plane to think over her next steps vis-a-vis marrying Seymour. So the team head over to a giant portal leading to what is presumably the afterlife. Everybody is set to go inside, except for two, Auron and Riku. Given the recent comments from Seymour and his strong reluctance to enter the far plane, Auron is getting more and more suspicious about his aliveness. Riku, on the other hand, just seems to be a scaredy cat. More on that later. In the far plane, everybody is visiting some person from their past. First, Waka, who is speaking to his dead brother Chapu, the one who is said to physically resemble RNGesus. Personally, I don't see it. Notably, after this cutscene, the sword Brotherhood that RNGesus is carrying gets a serious buff. Doesn't save his bad stats though. Next, Lulu is also reminiscing about Chapu, and takes this time to impart some romantic wisdom upon RNGesus. Finally, Yuna is visiting her parents. RNGesus sees this and tries to find out how she feels about Seymour, and Yuna confesses she plans to refuse his proposal. Then, Yuna encourages RNGesus to summon the spirit of his father Jecht, saying that he won't show up because only the dead appear on the far plane. She wasn't wrong, Jecht didn't come, but RNGesus' mother did. It was then that he realized the reason he hates his father was jealousy of the love his mother had for him. After everybody finishes getting closure or learning life lessons or whatever, they leave the far plane and start heading back to inform Seymour of Yuna's reply. At that moment, an unwanted visitor tries to escape from the confines of the far plane, Seymour's father, Djose, who is recently deceased. Yuna sends him, and while doing so, RN seems to be greatly affected by the sending ceremony. Suspicious. Djose leaves behind a sphere, which Yuna pockets before she leaves. When Yuna goes to inform Seymour of her answer, RNGesus discovers that Seymour has already departed the city for the next temple in Macalania. Insert the most dated 90s joke ever.
They say Seymour went to Macalania Temple.
Macalania Temple.
Alright.
The team decide to move on to the next area, the Thunder Plains. When arriving in the Thunder Plains, RNGesus rightly questions how anybody in their right mind would choose to pass through this zone. Riku also has the right idea, clearly fearing for her life at the thought of all the lightning coming down. However, Lulu explains the purpose of the lightning rod towers, and everybody sets out. After a short tutorial about how to dodge lightning, RNGesus proceeds to get struck by lightning several times. The enemies here give a lot more XP than the area before Guadosalam. I got quite a few levels to spend. During combat, Wakka also picked up the Overdrive Mode Warrior, which means everybody who frequently attacks enemies to defeat them has it. While exploring, RNGesus found a strange stone in the shape of a funny-looking green man. When praying at this stone, it had some weird magical effect. Guess we will have to see what that means later. Sphere grid time, and this one was a doozy. RNGesus hits a dead end, and as he doubles back, he ends up going completely the wrong way down Lulu's grid, all the way back to Kimahri's eventually. Ouch. Wakka is making decent progress and picks up slow. At least he is still getting somewhere. Riku and Auron both start heading down the same path, right towards a Lulu's grid. Is the whole team going to be black mages or something? Finally, the worst news yet. Kimahri, the poor soul, has completed his circuit around and started going back for another lap. So many wasted sphere levels. Partway through the area, Riku has a complete mental breakdown and reverts to her animal brain for a minute. She begs and pleads to take a break at the nearby Rin travel agency. At first, the team are not having it, and they coldly keep walking as she cries about her fear of lightning. But finally, Auron comes around, and they decide to take a short break. Though, strangely, Yuna claims to be tired and rents a room by herself. Unlike her, a little bit more sphere gridding, Auron picks up Blizzard and Riku Fire. Then Yuna gets an actually useful spell in the form of Shell. Riku takes a second to explain to RNGesus why she is so afraid of lightning. She explains that her brother, named Brother, once cast a lightning spell at a water fiend, but hit her instead. That's when Lulu suggested Riku learn a little bit about magic herself. Oh, if only you knew, Lulu. When the proprietor of the establishment, Rin, comes out, he notices Auron nearby. It seems Rin once took care of a gravely injured Auron and nursed him a little bit, but strangely found Auron had gone missing despite his injuries. Once again, Auron seems ready to move on from this topic as fast as possible. The evidence is mounting. RNGesus goes snooping around Yuna's room and manages to cartoonishly fall into the room like a true dingus. Even during the preceding conversation where she actually is surprisingly forthcoming, he makes a big faux pas regarding Seymour.
Well, I know one way to take care of him.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
I actually took a small blitzball break here. Truth is, I was playing blitzball basically every save point I got to. This was a notable game because it ended the first league, and a bit of a nail-biter actually, as it was against the best team in the league, the Albed Sykes, and I only managed to score one time because of how OP Nimruk is. But I did come out on top and ended up sweeping the league with 10 wins and 0 losses or draws. The reward was only a sorta useless teleport sphere, and next league only has dark matter. Guess I'll be waiting for a bit to blitz again. The end goal is, of course, getting all the things for Wakka, with the Jupiter Sigil being the final prize. After blitzing, the crew convinces Riku to finally leave the travel agency and get moving. Weirdly, as soon as everybody steps outside, some strange man runs by and snaps a candid photo of Yuna before disappearing over the horizon. Nobody says a thing. After some more time spent crossing the Thunder Plains, dodging a few lightning bolts, getting hit by a few more, Yuna decides she has something important to say right now. As it turns out, Yuna has decided to marry Seymour after all. Yay! Auron doesn't object, since she declares she will still go through with the pilgrimage. Only RNGesus is strongly opposed. Before exiting the area, another set of level ups. Kimahri successfully broke out of the loop, going north into RNGesus' grid. Auron skipped getting the rest of the first tier black magic spells and went straight into Lulu's grid proper. Lulu apparently found her way onto Wakka's grid as she picked up Silence Buster. This expert grid is a bit confusing to follow. Riku got the rest of the first tier black magic spells, then, instead of going for Lulu's grid, doubles back and goes onto Yuna's instead. Wakka picked up the first luck upgrade using the only fortune sphere I had, so for the time being, I'm treating luck spheres as dead ends, same as locks. Yuna made a detour out of her grid onto Lulu's, but that isn't such a bad thing since they both have similar stat boosts and Yuna already has high magic stat. Finally, RNGesus pulled a Kimahri and went in a circle for no value. One final note about the Thunder Plains, there was a particularly nasty random encounter right near the end where we were ambushed by an iron giant and 2 floating eyes. Shortly after starting, Kimahri goes down, followed by Lulu getting confused and Auron going down. So I was left with 1 confused, near-dead Lulu and 2 dead boys. I managed to recover with a Mega Phoenix and pulled out a win with Kimahri's Stone Breath. RNGesus talks with Auron about Yuna's intentions. He's left feeling a little better after hearing Yuna has a plan and isn't just getting manipulated. While crossing the woods, one of my personal favorite areas in the game by the way, they've run into Big Bartello running around in a panic. It seems Donna has disappeared. Riku seems to know more about this than she's letting on. Considering she flat out admitted to being in the Machina that kidnapped Yuna, I think it's a reasonable assumption she knows exactly where Donna went. Moving along, RNGesus caught some butterflies, but only got an MP sphere. The woods were great XP, so everybody got a few more sphere levels. Yuna got Reflex from Lulu's grid and continues along that way. Kimahri opened up a level 1 lock only to enter what looks to be a dead end, though there is a level 2 lock in there. Maybe he will get one soon? During some more battles, RNGesus finally got a hold of his second overdrive, Slice and Dice. This one is significantly stronger, especially in boss battles. Another butterfly catching game, this time an even worse reward in the form of an ether. Near the end of the woods, they find an area that Auron seems very interested in, and he cuts a path through the trees to a clearing. In the clearing, a fiend came out of the water to ambush them. It was the Spheromorph, a morphtastic, blobby monster that loves to change elemental weaknesses. Now, little does this thing know, my whole team is underpowered except for Big Mage Boss Lulu, so this thing really didn't know what hit it. Kimahri put on a little haste, Lulu capped out on focus during off turns, and melees such as Auron or Wakka prodded for elemental weaknesses by smacking the thing. It did very little damage to the party since it had power break, and Lulu eventually was hitting for upwards of 2,000 damage per spell. Extremely easy win this time. The reward for winning was a sphere left behind by Jecht full of charming memories of their bro trip 10 years past. Also, Auron picked up his next overdrive, and the Jecht sphere collectible was unlocked throughout the world, with more of his overdrives being available for finding them all. Auron tries to express how Jecht really felt about RNGesus, and it seems his daddy issues are getting a little less severe these days. The team make it to the next area, a cold region called Lake Macalania. First, some more level ups. Wakka is just moving right along on his path. RNGesus picks up Riku's ability, Steal. Kimahri did indeed get the opportunity to open up that level 2 lock, but fate decided against it and he went back the way he came. Riku picked up Lancet, which I think makes her the 4th person to get it. Lulu is also just moving right along. Auron, however, made a big move by breaking through a sphere lock out of Lulu's grid and into Wakka's. Might be some hope yet. Finally, Yuna also has nothing notable to report. As the team go towards the temple in Lake Macalania, they are greeted by Trommel, who comes to receive Yuna. During this brief period, Yuna is actually out of the party. I know because I ran back to save and got into a battle, with Yuna not being available. I made a backup save at this location, because I know some really serious boss battles are coming up, and that grinding will be more difficult, especially for Yuna. So, just in case something proves to be too difficult, I knew I might have to come back here to get stronger before trying again. After making my backup save, I continued on to the boss fight below. The battle is against a hulking machina called the Crawler, and for this fight, Yuna is actually back in the party. The Crawler comes equipped with a little buddy named the Negator, which is a real pest. It stops all magic and even summons, and it is also a flying monster, which makes it out of reach for melee attacks. So basically, Wakka or bust here. After defeating the Negator with Wakka, the team went to work pummeling the Crawler, using mostly lightning magic from Lulu for damage. The Crawler is constantly charging up a dangerous super attack called the Mana Beam, so before it could use that, Yuna used Grand Summon and pulled out Ixion. Thor's hammer did max damage for this point in the game, which was a significant chunk of its remaining HP. Then, Ixion ate the Mana Beam and was killed immediately. At least he did some good damage. After Ixion's big hit, the boss didn't require much more work, though it did summon its little buddy again before the end. Some Wakka and Lulu teamwork got the job done. After the crawler exploded, Riku lets the cat out of the bag when she replies to brother in the Albed language. Now Wakka is suddenly in full-on racist mode and in a perpetual sour mood for a long time after. Riku and Wakka have some philosophical debate about the merits of following dogma versus using critical thinking. It's all well and good, except they kind of have bigger fish to fry since Yuna is going off to marry a psychopath at this very moment. The rest of the team are way more accepting than Wakka and quickly go to work fixing some Albed snowmobiles, which they use to ride off and save Yuna. Lulu rides on the back with RNGesus, which gives them some one-on-one time. She is turning into a real big sister type to him, and not in a weird dating sim way. This temple looks pretty precarious. It's in a gargantuan frozen cavern protruding from the ceiling, aiming down at the frozen lake below. After walking across a narrow bridge made entirely of ice and somehow not slipping off and dying, the team reach the temple doors, at which point, somehow this guy realizes Riku is an Albed on sight, though Wakka couldn't this whole time. Is it obvious or isn't it? Some quick level ups. Wakka uses a level 1 sphere to get to a path to a different area. Lulu also opens up a lock, though hers leads to a dead end with only some HP inside, so back to the fork for her. RNGesus confirms his route down into Yuna's zone, though misses Kira and Asuna sadly. Kimari picked up the useful delay attack. That should come in handy later. Soon after reaching the temple, there is a ruckus when one of the temple ladies finds a sphere of Jiskel in Yuna's stuff that they were clearly snooping around in. This is when the rest of the team finally see what Jiskel was trying to tell them and what Yuna has been hiding. Jiskel realized Seymour was twisted and had dark intentions before he died, and even correctly predicted Seymour would kill him to make a grab at power. Now understanding the threat that Seymour poses, the team immediately go to Yuna's aid, with Kimari leading the charge past the guards. When they get to where Seymour is waiting, Yuna comes out of the room with a faith. Apparently, she already got the new Aeon. Everybody confronts Seymour about what Jiskel said, and even Yuna decides to stop skirting the issue and get an answer out of him directly. Seymour isn't even trying to hide his evil anymore though, and straight up decides to murder the lot of them. With no choice but to defend themselves and Yuna, a battle begins. Now, I had no idea what to do about these Guado guards here. I later looked up the actual solution, but for now I was just banging my head against a wall with their auto potions. After a little while, Yuna decides to summon her newest Aeon to try and take these guys out. She has an easy time one-shotting the Guado guards, but for some reason Seymour really goes into turbo mode when an Aeon is out and spams tier 3 magic instead of tier 2. So the summon doesn't last long. When it is just Seymour left, the team take a slow and steady approach, getting some buffs and keeping themselves healed while doing small bits of damage with Wakka. That's when Seymour pulls out the big guns, Anima. Now Anima is kinda crazy for this point in the game. She alternates between using Boost to charge her overdrive meter, and Pain, which is instant death to one character. There's no way to protect against it at this level, not even sure if it can miss, so basically just have to keep in mind every other turn someone is going to die. Sticking with the buff plan, Wakka gets pretty beefy and becomes the primary damage source for this section. His overdrive did a particularly high amount of damage. With a haste from Kimari and some luck that Pain never targeted him, Wakka really carried this fight. In the end, Wakka managed to defeat Anima before its overdrive was full, which would have probably been game over. Then, immediately after starting the next leg of the fight against Seymour, Wakka used his overdrive again and just ended it immediately, completely crushed. Seymour was defeated. Presumably, he would have died from his injuries. Getting hit with a blitzball that many times will do that. Auron was shouting at Yuna to send him, but before she could get it done, Trommel and his goons carried Seymour's body away. Looks like this isn't over just yet. The team are pretty gloomy over just declaring themselves traitors to Yevon by attacking a maester, but no time to sulk about it now. After the battle, we get to name the new Aeon as Shiva, then get some more levels. During this level up segment, the biggest news is that Auron got access to Sleep Attack and Yuna got access to Bio. Though Yuna will be missing from the party for a quite long time soon after this, so not many opportunities to use it. On the way out the door, the Cloister of Trials decides to activate, trapping the team inside until they can solve it. This one is pretty tedious, and I even had to do it twice because I left to save, not realizing it would completely reset the puzzle. When they reach the outside, Trommel is waiting. He sicks all his Guado companions on the party to attack them for what they've done. That's when it turns into a chase across the long ice bridge out of the area. Some of them catch up, and it turns into a battle. After seemingly getting away, they are ambushed by one last group of Guado who are supporting a hulking fiend called a Wendigo. This thing is a beast. The Guado beef it up with Berserk, and they even heal it with eye drops if it gets blinded. When it lands a punch, it might as well one-shot, even without Berserk. Wakka barely survived a punch from full health. Yuna summons once, and Valefor actually did some pretty good work here. Valefor has high evasion, and evading attacks gives a ton of overdrive, so just avoiding the one punch allowed Valefor to use Energy Blast. It did max damage to all targets, finally finishing off the two Guado, though Valefor couldn't dodge everything and finally got taken out by a nasty punch. Now it's just the Wendigo, buffed by Protect and Shell thanks to the Guado goons, so the team worked on a slow and steady approach again. Esuna to get rid of Berserk, Power Break to lower physical damage, Blind to keep its accuracy low, lots of stacks of Cheer to raise physical defense. It took a while to beat it down through Protect and avoiding the counter stance it likes to do, but eventually the team took it down. But not before it slammed the ice below them, cracking it and sending the team plummeting into the lake. At the bottom of the lake, the team are somehow all still alive. They discuss what to do next, with Wakka still being a negative Nancy, and Auron really committing to finishing Yuna's pilgrimage, even if it means defying Yevon. At some point, the area starts shaking and they realize Sin is nearby. While affected by the toxin, RNGesus comes to terms with his feelings about his father. And then he wakes up in some strange place, face down in a pool of water. This feels familiar. This time he is in the middle of a desert and all alone. While moving through the desert, he gets into a battle with a big birdie. This one was pretty scary with only one character, but shortly after the fight began, Auron showed up, and not long after that, Lulu joined in as well. Now with a full party, they took down Big Bird and moved on. Wakka was found nearby, waiting under some ruins alone. The next area had Kimahri in a dead end by himself, and finally, Riku was waiting to greet everybody at the end of the area. Once again, Riku and Wakka bicker for a while about their respective positions. This time, Riku is willing to share the location of the secret Al Bhed home, but only under the condition of absolute secrecy, as she doesn't trust Yevon. Wakka takes offense to the accusation, despite every word coming out of his mouth dripping with malice for the Al Bhed, all because of a lifetime of indoctrination from Yevon. Eventually, Wakka relents and says he will keep the secret, and they move on to the next area. There was one random encounter with a sandworm, and this one was pretty rough. Though after a while, they got into a groove and once again relied on Lulu and Wakka to take it down. These two are the clear frontrunners for damage in the party. During some level ups, the most notable thing that happened was Riku just going in circles, so she wasted several levels now. But some good news, Wakka picked up haste, which means Kimahri isn't the only one who can use it anymore. Very nice. At first, I was trying to explore this area thoroughly and find all the loot, but I quickly got tired of the extremely lengthy battles, especially zoos and sandworms. And without Yuna, healing and especially raising is a concern. So I decided to just sprint for home, making sure to pick up all the Al Bhed primers on the way. Barring the way to home was a battle against a Sandragora. This was a little bit of a problem, because it kept giving confused to the team, in particular Wakka. It mostly just made it take a really long time to win. Lulu helped a lot though, as usual. Upon cresting the hill and seeing Home, Riku is justifiably freaked out. Home is under attack by someone, with lots of fiends flying about. She learns from a dying compatriot that the culprits are the Guado. Then, Riku's father shows up, Sid. He invites the party to go to battle in Home against the Guado. Home is the one location in the game that you can never return to after leaving it, so this is a very particularly sensitive area for missables. Most famously, there are 3 Al Bhed primers in the area that if you don't find, you never get another chance. But, with the party at the level they are, the random encounters are especially brutal. Lots of battles went super south immediately, ending up in a game over. Mostly, the Guado magic hits very hard for a lot of members, and characters like Riku just get one shot. It was a lot, but after a lot of resets and close calls, I managed to gather up all the primers and get out of there alive. Riku is down in the dumps, as I imagine most would be when they see their people being slaughtered. And finally, after everything, Wakka shows some empathy. Riku explains Yuna is likely in a place called the Summoner's Sanctum. The Al Bhed had been collecting summoners on their pilgrimage after all. While Riku tries to explain their intentions, Wakka surprisingly gets it, but RNGesus doesn't. So things get a little bit awkward for a minute.
It's quiet. Kimahri goes now.
In the Sanctum, Riku finally comes clean about why they're so determined to stop summoners. When a summoner defeats Sin, that summoner dies in the process. RNGesus can't handle this sudden information and freaks out. He even assaults an innocent bird monster. The Al Bhed reveal their escape plan, a strange machina in an underground hangar. When everybody boards it to evacuate, it is revealed what the machina is, an airship. They open up the hangar and fly out. Once they reach a safe distance, they unleash the salvo. Using missiles, they destroy Home from afar. Riku is at a low point. Wakka tries to console her and fails utterly.
Boom! Like happy festival fireworks, yeah?
You can cram your happy festival, you big meanie.
Now that the team is riding the airship, they hash out their feelings about Yuna. RNGesus wants to save Yuna and not let her sacrifice herself. Sid agrees. Auron argues it is her duty to finish the pilgrimage and has a tiff with Sid about it. When they finally locate where Yuna is, she appears on a view screen, in a wedding dress, standing next to a very much not dead Seymour. Riku is understandably confused. That is when Auron explains how someone becomes an unsent. Wonder why he knows so much about that. Around this time, Rin shows up and tells them that the Guado have infiltrated the ship. The team run upstairs to deal with them, and along the way, RNGesus picks up a pretty good ability, Life. Very handy. When they reach the highest level of the airship, they notice something unusual outside. A giant dragon flying nearby. Lulu tells them what this is, the guardian worm of Bevelle, Evrae. Sid is very determined to fight. Guess it's boss battle time. This is the fight I was most scared of in Act 2. Evrae is quite the challenging boss, and being so underpowered really made it a spooky scenario. Starting out, it was going okay until the first attempted use of poison breath. There was not any chance for Sid to move the airship in time before it hit, and it hit the party pretty hard. After recovering, the team went into defense mode, full hastes, slow on Evrae, and lots of stacks of cheer. And Wakka was in charge of damage. This strategy was working pretty well for a while. Then there was the turn. Late in the fight, Evrae starts hasting itself. Every single time it loses haste, it gains it again. Slow doesn't work either. It breaks action economy to do that. So, ignoring that, since there is nothing that can be done, the only solution is to just attack. Riku was responsible for heals and buffs, and Wakka and Kimahri for damage. It took a long time and a lot of work, but they managed to get it done. This is really the first time Riku was especially useful in combat, but it won't be the last. After defeating Evrae, the most epic scene in the game plays as the team ride down on wires to crash Yuna's wedding. During the battles against all the soldiers and the wedding ceremony, I noticed something unusual. Lulu is really strong. Like, her strength is only 1 below Wakka's and higher than everybody else. When I attempted to use a melee attack with her, it did more damage than Auron or RNGesus. Not sure when this happened, but apparently Lulu is the strongest member of the party in basically all metrics, only really accuracy is comparatively low. Once all the guards are cleared out, the party reaches Seymour and Yuna tries to send him. The maesters threaten to kill the rest of the party if she goes through with it. When she gives up and Seymour steals a kiss to seal their matrimony, he then orders his goons to kill the party anyway. At this point, Yuna has had enough, and uses the threat of her death to end this confrontation. She leaps off the edge of the building, and summons Valefor to save her from falling. Then, Riku throws a flashbang and uses the opportunity to get everybody out of there. As the party retreat into the temple, they know to look for Yuna where the faith is. Along the way, they use a bunch of machina to get around, and Wakka questions this. Maybe he's finally seeing the true colors of the church? The team enter the next cloister of trials, and this one is a futuristic moving walkway? Hard to decide if this one or Macalania is more annoying. This one sure takes longer. The moving walkways are just so slow, and I accidentally missed my goal several times from the janky mechanics. Fortunately, you can't miss the destruction sphere here. I did get the optional chest though. It had a weapon for Kimahri inside, a unique one that doesn't have the piercing effect. After the Cloister of Trials, the team arrived in the Chamber of the Faith, and without waiting, RNGesus immediately breaks all rules and busts his way inside. Kimahri even gives him a hand. Inside, RNGesus sees what the faith really is, a long-dead soul trapped in stone. Upon leaving the chamber with Yuna, the team are arrested by Keenock and sent to prison. Yuna is put on trial by the Council of Maesters. Yuna doesn't hesitate to reveal what she knows, that Seymour murdered his father. Shocking revelation, I know, except nobody on the council seems to care. It turns out Maesters Micah and Keenock both knew and condoned Seymour's actions. So when Yuna revealed the other big news, that Seymour is dead but unsent, well, turns out Maester Micah is unsent too. Wonder if anybody else around here is. This council really is corrupt, huh? Wakka starting to finally see what's going on? In the prison below, RNGesus is stuck in a cell with Auron, and he just has no chill at all. It doesn't take long before Keenock shows up and escorts them to their next destination, execution. Except the manner of execution is a little strange. They're tossed into a canal filled with water. Did they forget this is a world where people can breathe and even play sports underwater? Suddenly, we change to Yuna's perspective, and she is alone in a dark dungeon. This is the Via Purifico, and apparently nobody ever gets out of here alive. Since Yuna is all alone, any battles for a while are basically mandatory summon battles. I have a feeling it will be a good idea to grind up their overdrives while I'm at it. Just a hunch. Yuna runs into Auron first, in an area that looks like it might be the end of the road. Kimahri was found shortly after, and finally Lulu in a dead end. After thoroughly exploring the place, the party of 4 walk down the red hallway from before, and they find someone waiting for them, Isaru, the summoner. It turns out Maester Keenock gave him the order to make sure Yuna doesn't get out of here alive. So this is a summoner versus summoner battle. First, Isaru calls out his Ifrit, so Yuna decides it would be a good idea to use Shiva. She does some great damage with Blazara, but I totally missed that Ifrit starts with a full overdrive, so as soon as Ifrit got a turn, Shiva was done for. One shot by Hellfire. After losing Shiva, Yuna called upon Valefor to handle the remainder of Ifrit's HP. Energy Blast still managed to do full damage. I wonder why everybody thinks Valefor is weak. Isaru must be in the know, because his next summon is Valefor. Yuna responds with Ifrit, a reverse rematch of the last battle. This time, however, Isaru's Valefor does not have overdrive, so Ifrit has time to pummel it first. After a few back and forth swings, when Valefor is about to charge overdrive, Ifrit uses Hellfire. Not quite max damage, but close enough, and enough to beat Valefor. Finally, the last summon is Bahamut. This one is quite intimidating, but Yuna relies on Old Faithful Valefor. This Bahamut is interesting in that it doesn't take any offensive actions at all except Mega Flare, and it takes 5 turns of idling to charge Mega Flare. So during all that time, Valefor is free to smack, and smack he does, many times. But the other thing about Aeon battles is that Aeons have a nifty little move called Shield, and Shield cuts like 90% of taken damage or something. So using Shield on the turn it uses Mega Flare means it barely even scratches Valefor. In the end, Valefor manages to eat 2 Mega Flares and beat Bahamut before he can use it a third time. And with that, Isaru is defeated and Yuna's party can finally escape via Purifico. In a sudden jump cut, we move over to RNGesus' perspective. He is underwater in a massive canal with the other 2 swimmers in the party, Wakka and Riku. There was exactly 1 random encounter down here against 2 octopi, but why oh why did they make these things armored? There is no way to use a piercing weapon with this particular group. Maybe you can add piercing with customization, but who would know to do that for this one part? Anyway, the fight took a very long time because damage was so low. Fortunately, it was just the one battle before the boss. Evrae Altana is notoriously kind of lame, especially after the epic battle that was Evrae. I'm sure everybody knows the trick by now, but this Evrae is a zombie, so it dies to healing. Specifically, any revive effect, such as the life spell or a phoenix down, does half its max HP. This is not half its current HP, it is half its max, so it dies in 2 of these effects. Unfortunately, the stupid thing got a turn before anybody else and immediately offed Riku, but RNGesus and Wakka got the job done easily. After a short swim through a completely empty canal, RNGesus and crew escape as well, and they run into Yuna's group right outside in an area called Highbridge. But their reunion is short-lived as Seymour immediately shows up to rain on their parade, and he is carrying a lifeless Keenock. Guess nobody is safe from this guy, huh? After revealing that Seymour is a true nihilist, wanting to end all life and spirit to save it from the pain of existence, Kimahri takes a stab at him. Good try, but doesn't quite work. Maybe if we had killed the Night Song first? Seymour transforms into a monstrous form after devouring the energy of his goons. Kimahri takes up a defensive posture and Auron orders everybody to flee. After running a short while, Yuna begs to go back and save Kimahri. RNGesus is down to clown with that idea, so he and Yuna have a cute moment and then run back. Everybody else follows shortly after and then run down the bridge to save Kimahri. This is a tough one that I was woefully unprepared for. My first attempt went absolutely awfully and we were wiped out within a few turns by magic spam. But after knowing his shtick, I went back in with a plan in mind. This time, bringing Riku and Lulu in on the front lines, I set up a magic defense brigade. Or I would have, if it didn't force you to use the set party of Yuna, Kimahri, and RNGesus to start. So, swapping them out for the party I listed before, Riku and Lulu got to work. Riku popped a lunar curtain to give herself shell since her HP is just terrible. Then, Lulu started spamming focus. Her massive HP pool and native magic defense meant she didn't need shell nearly as much as Riku. Some hastes from Kimahri and Wakka also helped quite a bit. Once magic defense was as high as it could go, Riku kept up healing with Albed potions, and Lulu and whoever else was in the group at the time did damage. This worked for a good while, until Seymour changed to his second phase. Now he was spamming Break, which turns a character to stone. and unfortunately the first person he targeted was Riku. Under normal circumstances, an Albed potion would heal stone, but nobody has use except Riku. Once Seymour was spamming break, a change in strategy was required. Now, max damage was the ticket. So Yuna came in and showed off all her Aeons. First, Bahamut. Mega Flare did about 6,000 damage to both targets, and that meant an extra bit to Seymour since the Morta body absorbs some of his HP to come back. Seymour will use up his turn one-shot killing any Aeon that is on the field, but this is actually a good thing. That means he isn't using his turn to stone someone or use Flare. So next up is another Aeon, this time Ixion. Thor's hammer also did great damage, more actually, about 8,000 to both targets. At this point, nobody had a stored up overdrive, so the next Aeon was just a sacrificial lamb. It was Valefor, who came in and did a respectable 1,600 damage smack in the face before it died. Now, Seymour was very weak, so Riku finished him off with a water gem and the fight was won. Well, it was actually the Morta body that finished him off with Morta absorption. Whoops. That was the big climax of this act. Now for a little bit of downtime. The team regroup in Macalania Woods. Yuna is off by herself. RNGesus runs off to find her, and then they spend some quality time together. Yuna is considering quitting her journey at the encouragement of RNGesus, but she knows it is futile and she breaks down. And then there is a scene that I can't show because I would get in trouble, but the music is bopping. In the end, Yuna resolves herself to finish her journey, and everybody supports her decision. The next morning, they set out to the next area, and that's it for this video. At the end of Act 1, things were pretty breezy still. None of the randomness of the levels made for any significant issues. Well, this time around is totally different. Now things have really ramped up, and the random sphere grid is taking its toll. RNGesus basically has no real niche. He is still pretty weak. I would say Riku is in a similar boat, but she at least has access to use, which has been very, very useful in many difficult fights during Act 2. Kimahri is pretty bad except for his access to the haste spell, and Auron is also falling a little bit behind, though his strength is still holding on. That leaves Wakka, Lulu, and Yuna. These three are keeping things together. Wakka is the strongest physical attacker, though if we look at raw stats, somehow Lulu is not far behind him. But since Lulu has so much higher magic, she still works better as a mage than a fighter. If something is just really resistant to magic, then Lulu can smack it and hold her own. Yuna lives in her own niche of healer and summoner, and Aeons are actually quite powerful, so Yuna will always be useful. Going into Act 3, there are some of the most difficult battles in the game coming up. What sorts of things will I have to come up with to get out of trouble this time around? Will I need to grind a bunch of levels in Mount Gagazet just to get past a certain zombifying boss? Will I spend 4 hours dodging lightning bolts just to get a little doll? We'll find out next time. I'll be working on it as fast as I can. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my other videos as well. I especially recommend the Baldur's Gate series, as I think that one is a particularly fun concept.